arrived at this video because you're wondering, how do these people in Phoenix survive the heat in the summertime? And that's a good question because, let's be honest, not everything is all sunshine and rainbows. No city is perfect, and Phoenix is no exception to that. So we do have excessive heat. Now, I talk about all the time, 2 seasons in Phoenix that we have. We have hot for about 3 to 4 months, and then we have the other 8 months that is just pure awesomeness, right? Hot and awesomeness. And I say that tongue in cheek to an extent, but I'm gonna dive into Arizona and the top aspects or questions we receive about how to survive the heat in Phoenix, and the 7 questions or so about the heat. So stay tuned, we're getting after it right now. But first, if you don't mind, check us out here on Google. We have over 440 5-star reviews from past clients that hopefully one day will be just like you. So we would love to help you out with anything real estate related, buying or selling. Contact us at the information below or click on the Calendly link in the description below. The first question we get all the time about the heat is, what do you do? What in the world do you do for the 3 months, 4 months where it's hot and you can't just go outside without frying an egg on the concrete? Well, that is kind of a myth. My son actually tried that this summer and we couldn't get the thing to actually fry. So that was kind of disappointing, but it was really hot outside and we just couldn't get it to fry. But the reality is it's hot and people stay inside. So we have air conditioning and we stay inside a lot in the summertime, even though it's bright and sunny. But I don't know how people survived before air conditioning was actually invented, but apparently it did, because I've seen those Western shows, people wearing long suits and more clothes than we wear now, and yet they had no air conditioning and it was almost just as hot. Speaking of that, what is the historical aspect when it comes to the temperatures in Phoenix? Well, did you know that since the year 1900 and the turn of the 20th century, the average temperature in Phoenix has risen 2.5 degrees. So a climate study done by Arizona State University has shown that to be true. Now, what's interesting is that last year in 2023, Arizona actually had the record-breaking streak of 55 days in a row with the temperature rising up to 110 or above. Now, that was a record. That was a lot of hot days. I remember that. That was not terribly fun. But if you're thinking that there's gonna be new records every single year, I highly doubt that's the case, because weather sometimes can be cyclical. Now, the warmest day on record was actually in the summer, June of 1990 in the Phoenix area. But there's no doubt since 1990 that the weather has actually warmed up. That 2.5 degree increase is a real thing. We have some graphs here to show you that the number of days throughout the decades from the early 1900s are actually increasing in terms of warmer years. And what's also interesting about the desert, now we don't have humidity, which is fantastic. Now it's a dry heat, and guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It is hot, all right? No doubt about that, but you don't have humidity, so you don't get that sticky wet feeling, which is nice. But what's interesting is the amount of nights, warm nights considered at 80 degrees or above, where the temperature never drops below that at night, actually have been increasing as well. So overall, that 2.5 average degree temperature since the turn of the 20th century is a real number over the past 124 years, and probably likely they're projecting to continue to increase due to just overall industrialization of the state and the more population and things of that nature. But does this mean that you can't do anything at all during the summertime? No, not at all. You can do a lot of things because it still is palatable. There's not, 60 inches of snow on the ground somewhere. And so you can get out and you can do the things, but you just got to do them early and you have to be prepared. For example, a lot of people will go running, walking their dog, hiking, and a lot of outdoor activities, but they'll do it in the morning. Because when the sun comes up, obviously it starts to warm up pretty quickly into the morning time. And people will go actually golf. Now, they'll go golf in the morning, and there's some early tee times, which is great because the sun comes up around 5:30, depending on the time of the summer, and you can get a quick 9 holes or even 18 in a lot of times by 10 o'clock, 10:30 a.m. Once you start getting past 10:30, 11, it does get really hot, even though you're out there golfing and not moving around at a fast pace. But you need to be prepared. Sunscreen is paramount, and even more important is water. Making sure you stay hydrated, because you don't know you're dehydrated until sometimes it's too late, and that's not a good feeling to have or a good position to be in. And so ideally you want to avoid being outside doing a lot of physical activity during the middle of the day. But at night, when sundown occurs, it actually gets fairly pleasant because, again, you don't have a lot of humidity. So for example, I coach my 2 sons' tackle football teams, and we have practice at night starting around 5 o'clock. And it is hot out there for a little while, but we're in a situation where there's a lot of big trees and the shade starts to overtake the grass area fairly quick. So even though it's hot and sweaty, you just have to take a lot of water breaks. And then before you know it, midway through practice, it starts to cool down a little bit, because when that sun gets down in you're in shade, it is a completely different animal and definitely more palatable when you have that shade cover. But believe it or not, you still have sports that happen during the middle of the day. You have baseball teams throughout the summer that do still play a little bit. A lot of sports do take time off in the summer because of that heat. But then you have football that starts up in August when it's really hot, early August, because the first games for youth or high school usually start at the end of August, beginning of September timeframe, and it's still pretty hot at that time. So it's definitely doable, but it's interesting how your body knows how to adapt. I've been here in the Phoenix area for 20 years now, and your blood thins out. It's a real thing. It's an adaptation because I know when I go back to the Midwest or East Coast and it's December, January, and it's freezing, I am not as tough as I once used to be. I have to layer up a little more than I used to be because, again, the blood thins out. You're used to a warmer environment, and that's what ends up happening. So to tie a bow on the heat part, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It is not pleasant to be in. If you could be somewhere else, you would choose to do so, but it is palatable and people do survive the summertime, no problem. And then before you know it, the weather breaks and it's awesomeness once again in Arizona. Now, speaking of surviving the summer or trying to get out of town if you can, number two is there anywhere else I could go that's within a driving distance, Kelly, to beat the heat? And the answer is absolutely. And that would be the northern rim of Arizona. See, Arizona is the 6th largest state actually in the country, and the ecosystem and the climate varies dramatically from the north part down to the south part. You have some of the warmest areas in the entire country in the south part, the deserts, where Phoenix is located in the country. But then you go up north and you have an environment and climate similar to that of Colorado, where you're elevated above 7,000 feet, ponderosa pines, and the weather just is completely different. You have snow in the winter. You have a summer that can be a little warm, but usually it caps out around the low 80s to mid 80s throughout most of the summertime at the peak. You also have other cities up north that maybe aren't as elevated as high as Flagstaff, but you have Sedona, you have Payson, you have Prescott, you have Show Low, Pine Top, and the list goes on of some pretty cool places to go where you can have a second home or a place to go get out of the heat, or maybe you just want to be an Airbnb guest in someone else's home and beat the heat for a week or two during the summer. It's a nice reprieve. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that if you just have a weekend to get away from the heat, you can do that as well. You can leave on a Friday, go up north. It's a 1.5 hour to 2 hour drive up to Flagstaff. It's 3 hours up to Show Low and Pine Top. A lot of these towns offer that reprieve where you can be in a completely different climate in just an 1.5 hour drive and beat the heat to where you are looking 20, 30, sometimes 40 degrees difference, a swing where it's less hot and much cooler to get out of that heat for a weekend and then come back down on Sunday night or maybe early Monday morning and get back to your routine of work or whatever it may be. So that is a nice reprieve. That's what a lot of Phoenicians actually do. They either go up there for a weekend or a week or even longer in some cases to get out of the heat, and then they can commute back down if they need to for an emergency, for work, or whatever it may be, and then head right back up for a good portion of the summer. And honestly, I know this channel is called Everything Phoenix. That's why I love Phoenix so much, because the diversity of the climate of the state of Arizona is so great that you can actually just drive an 1.5 hours or 2 hours north or south, depending where you're coming from, and you're just changing the weather in just that short period of time. So that is pretty cool that a lot of states or places across the country just don't have that option to get out of your climate unless you have your private jet or your commercial jet and you fly a couple hours to another place of the country. Now let's go to number 3. Now you're thinking, Kelly, we have to talk about air conditioning, and we will, but I'm gonna save the best for last. So we'll get to air conditioning here in just a bit. But before we do that, let's go number 3 with rain. Now the annual precipitation rate in the state of Arizona is 12.26 inches every year, but that's the whole state. Now down in the desert in Phoenix, where it's a little more dry, the average annual rainfall is 7.2 inches of rainfall for the entire year. That's it, guys. That being said, if you don't like rain, if you don't like cloudy days, then Phoenix is the place for you. With over 300 days of sunshine, we're one of the cities in all America that has that much sun. And it's a real thing where some people get depressed or have that anxiety around gloomy gray skies in some parts of the country. And they have to actually move to some place that's more sunny because it just cheers them up. And that's a good news too. Even if you can't go outside in the summertime because it is pretty hot, at least it's bright and sunny most of the time. And that just keeps you in an overall better mood. So now this leads us to our 4th thing, which is going to be wind or monsoons, because monsoons have both wind and rain, so it segues perfectly into our next thing. Now, hold on, you have a monsoon like, out in the South Pacific Ocean? No. We don't have a monsoon like that, guys. Our monsoons are a little bit different, and they include this weather phenomenon, which I love to say this word. It's called haboob. So Yeah, haboob. That's what it's called. As you can see, these haboobs are massive. They can be massive, and it's really weird to drive through it because you can actually drive through it and it's not going to blow your car over like a hurricane or anything of that nature. But you're driving through this dust storm that's so thin, you don't even hear the dust hitting your car necessarily in most cases. I've done it several times, and it's just a weird, eerie feeling. You feel like the world is ending because you're driving through this 40-foot dust storm that is moving so slowly, and yet in the horizon, when you see it coming, it is quite impressive. And that's part of the monsoon season. Now, with the monsoon season, you do get rain, but you get more wind than you do rain. In fact, the rainfall can be very sporadic with the monsoon season. In fact, we have seen that precipitation rates are actually going down over the decades in the past, which is unfortunate, but it is also staggered a little bit as well. But you definitely get the wind every single summer in July, August, when the monsoons are most prevalent. And the wind can blow dust around. Sometimes it just blows and doesn't even blow that much dust around because haboobs don't always come with a monsoon. So it is impressive with the windstorm, but a lot of times they'll blow around the hot air. And so if you can be inside, just stay inside. It's not worth going out to sea. But on sidebar, what is kind of cool when we talk about rain and wind, what's really awesome, guys, is that we love when it happens. Now, I know if you live in the Midwest or East Coast or anywhere else but Phoenix for the most part, you're like, rain, it's awful. You know, it's part of the ecosystem. We have to have it. But like, I prefer to have sunny skies all the time if I could. Well, yes, but because we have so much sunshine and heat, when it rains or gets cloudy out, everyone kind of runs to the window. Our kids love it to watch the rainfall come down. Whereas I remember as a kid growing up in Nebraska, when it's raining, it's like, oh, it's raining again. But now we're excited for the rain. It's interesting because it just doesn't happen that often. We love to see it pour and just get a little cooler outside and have the rain just drench everything because it's something we don't see that often. So speaking of water, we'll go to our fifth thing. This is a question we get all the time, which how are the pools in the summer compared to the wintertime because of the heat? Well, that's a great question. Now, a lot of houses have pools in their backyard. A majority of them have them in the Phoenix area because it's nice to have a pool because of the fact we have so much heat. There are community pools in some neighborhoods. There are clubs you can go to with pools. But if you can have it in your own backyard, that is ideal. Now, there is some maintenance cost to it and a downside from that standpoint, but to have that and enjoy that with your family or even just yourself in your own backyard is awesome. But how hot does it get in the summertime? Well, guys, picture a bath water. If you could go sit in your bathtub tonight and put a temperature on that's just comfortable, not too hot, not too cold, that's what the pool in Arizona feels like in the height of the summertime. So it's actually kind of nice to get in. And what's interesting, I don't remember this in other parts of the country, but what's interesting is when you actually get out of a really bathwater warm pool and it's hot outside, you feel kind of relax and actually a little chilly before you get dried off. So it kind of makes your temperature, internal temperature of your body go back down and kind of just cools you off overall, even when you're outside of the water. So having a pool, having the ability to cool your internal temperature down is really nice to have in the summertime. Now in the wintertime, you probably aren't going to go swimming that often in December and January because believe it or not, it does get pretty chilly at nighttime and that body of water known as your pool will drop in temperature and not be terribly comfortable to jump in. In fact, it's kind of like a warmer cold plunge, if you will. That's right. You would think that it's always warm, but it's not. Now, a lot of people do choose to build a spa, an in-ground or above-ground spa, to just use that body of water when it's the winter time. But a lot of people will heat their pools as well because they want to enjoy it year-round and be comfortable in that water. And to heat your pool, it's not terribly expensive. If you had to retrofit it with some plumbing, you're probably looking at around $5,000 to $7,000 based upon the cost of the heater and the equipment and the labor in that ballpark. But if you do it from the onset when you build a pool, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. And most pool heaters will run off of gas. Now, if your house doesn't have natural gas to it, because some neighborhoods in Phoenix don't have natural gas, then you'll probably want to get a big propane tank and run it off of that because it's still cheaper to operate your heater off of that in Arizona than it is an electric heater. So that's the skinny on pools, and it is one of the main things to do in the summertime when it's so hot outside because that does help you beat the heat. Now, the sixth thing we're going to discuss is solar. That's right, you have to talk about solar because we get so much sunshine in Arizona. So is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, it depends who you talk to. Now, I don't personally have solar on my house right now, but a lot of my clients and friends do. Now, we have an older roof and there's some mechanics as to why we don't at this time, but we probably will at some point in the future if you do it the right way. Now, what I highly advise against when it comes to solar is leasing the solar system. And they'll make the excuse because in 20 years when lease is up, which is the standard lease term for a solar lease, they'll say that you'll have outdated technology and you want to replace those panels anyways. But the reality is, while that may be true, you have nothing to show for that payment you made for 20 years. So in most cases, it's going to be far better to either pay for the solar system outright if you can, or if not, buy it and make the payments, taking the rebate you get when you first get it installed. But it's a math equation at the end of the day. You want to try to have enough solar panels to cover your entire electric bill, your usage. That's very important. If you don't, you're still going to have that electric bill plus your monthly fee to the solar company based on the fact that you have a loan or a lease with them. So ideally, the best thing to do is find a house that already has a prepaid solar system on it. And even if it's not maybe optimized to be the most efficient system for your usage, it's still better than nothing, because a lot of times there's not a whole lot of value transferred in terms of the sale of the property with that solar system. But yet you're inheriting a system where it's giving you free power now because it's completely paid off by the previous homeowner. And if it does cover your entire usage, you have very little of an electric bill, which is awesome. So overall, solar can be tricky. So give us a call. We would love to help you out with any questions you have about that or anything real estate related in general. 480-660-5974. Okay, transitioning now to the last thing we're going to talk about, which is air conditioning. Now, we say this for the last because this is a big one. This is the thing you really can't survive with anymore in this day and age in Phoenix without central air conditioning or air conditioning of some type. So the big question is, how much is your electricity bill going to be? Well, that is so dependent, and I'm sorry to give that cliche answer, but we can dive into a few things and give you some generalities, but the reality is it does depend on a lot of different things. Depends on when you use your air conditioning, how much you use it, what your temperature you want to keep your house at, and the list goes on and on and on. Let's dive into the first one. Let's go to a single story versus a two-story. Now, there's no question that in Arizona, two-story homes are cheaper on a price per square foot basis than single-story homes. Single-story homes are more preferred overall throughout the Phoenix area. But that doesn't mean a two-story home is less efficient necessarily, because it depends on what year they were built. Depends on what upgrades they did, what type of insulation they have, roof, etc., and the list goes on. So don't be scared of a two-story home just because of air conditioning or electric possible future bills, because a lot of that can be controlled by other factors. So now back to the electrical companies. There are two in the Phoenix area, SRP and APS. And you don't really have a choice, so it is kind of a monopoly to an extent, because based on your address where you live, you're going to be assigned one of those two power companies. And there's not one that's better than the other, but they both have similar plans and costs when it comes to your electricity use. So when are you going to use it the most? In Arizona, there's something called on-peak hours and off-peak hours. And if you're on peak, the cost is dramatically more for your usage than when you're off peak. Now, you can do a lot of things where it's just the 9 to 9 a.m. You can do, it's all the same all the time. You can do where it's just on peak 4 to 7 p.m. and off peak the rest of the day. You say, Kelly, that seems like the best deal. Well, in most cases, it can be, but also cannot be if you're going to be using a lot of electricity during 4 to 7 p.m. because that's where they get you. So you have to be disciplined, have a plan in place, have a smart thermostat, and the list goes on. So there's this phenomenon known as supercooling your home. This is what we do, and when we switch to this, it saved us hundreds of dollars on our electricity bill. Here's how it works, and here's how I would recommend you survive in Phoenix when it comes to your AC running a lot of the time, because it's the summertime and it's hot outside. So first, what you do is decide what that temperature is you want to be throughout the day, the entire day and night, and where you have the temperature below the normal comfortable rate you would have it at if you're trying to just save money, because it was all the same usage wise. So for example, what we do is we keep it at 72 throughout the day and usually at the nighttime, because in our house, that's very comfortable for us. And remember, in Arizona, because there's no humidity, what might be 72 in Arizona that feels comfortable like that might be 66 in Iowa or Mississippi or someplace else in the country where there's a lot of humidity. That's the difference in the fluctuation of the temperature that you have a thermostat at. That's a little FYI. So 72 is actually very comfortable when it comes to Arizona, no humidity in the air. And so if you keep it at 72 the entire time, you keep it all the way at 72 up until the point it hits 4 p.m. where now the usage jumps up dramatically. And what we found out is when we just cut it at 4 p.m., by the time it gets to 7 p.m. over the course of 3 hours, it never goes above about 78 degrees. Now for us, being uncomfortable is right around 82, 83 degrees. So ideally we'd have it kick on at 82 degrees if it ever reached that point, but in 3 hours, it doesn't. And the reason why is because everything in the house has been super cooled the entire day. The furniture, the rugs, everything inside the house is already less hot, and therefore it takes a while for the entire house to heat up. And so the AC doesn't run at all during the on-peak hours, and then it kicks on again right at 7 when it's over, and now the usage obviously gets cheaper. So this has been a huge strategy that works out well for us, and I would highly recommend that you consider doing it as well. Also, with the power companies, they have a plan called the equalizer plan. Now, how this works is if you're on a fixed budget and you don't want your electric bill going like this all the time throughout the year based upon your usage and the temperature outside, then you can actually fix it at a specific cost every single month. So for example, if it fluctuates up to $500 in the summertime and down to $90 or $100 in the wintertime, then you can set it at $300, let's say, or $250, or a fixed amount the electric company will give you, and have it be like that the entire year through, so that you can budget for your power bill every single month, which is kind of cool. And after that 12 months is up and it resets, the average bill might go up or down for the next year based upon your previous 12 months of usage. So it's really cool how that works, and something you can do to help budget for those hot summers in Arizona where the electric bill does go up. So again, Kelly, what is the electric bill going to be? Well, I'll give you an example. If you have one air conditioner and you have about a 2,500 square foot single story home, as in this example, and on average, it could be as low as $130 to $200 a month. That's possible, but it depends on a lot of factors again, so it's hard to say. In my situation, I have a house that was built in the late 70s, and it's a little bit larger, but we've tried to upgrade things over the years, and our air conditioner units are fairly newer. We have an air conditioning bill that reaches about $500 to $550 in the summertime, and it could be a lot worse, and by the way, it was a lot worse. It was in the 700s, low 700s, before we started figuring out this super cooling strategy. So we are so thankful for that. I wish it didn't take me 20 years almost to figure it out, but that's why you watch this channel. These videos like this will give you the tidbits so that where I failed and what I learned from, you can know right away and start saving money and have all these other benefits by being a subscriber of our YouTube channel. See how I snuck that in? So hopefully that answered a lot of the questions about the heat, how you survive in the summertime in Phoenix, and how things kind of work living down here. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, if you never want to miss another video, go ahead and please smash that subscribe button and like us, get us out to more and more people. We would truly appreciate that. And you can call me at any point. Contact us here at the information below, 480-660-5974, and we'd be happy to chat with you about anything related to the Phoenix area, the city we love so much. Oh, and check us out on Instagram right here at Kelly Cook Homes. We're putting out daily content for even more information for your personal education and enjoyment. And don't forget to call me when you can.